In this retro review of a model from 2010, we're looking at some mega heavy haulage. The model is made by Conrad and it comes in a very large box. And if you want to know what's in the box, you have to get a microscope out to look at that tiny label. Or wait until we open it up.
Let's weigh it up.
The big box lands gently on the weighbridge, and it's a beefy 8 pounds 3 ounces. What is 3.7 kilograms. Lifting the lid, we're met with black nothingness, but lifting that up, we see an instruction sheet. And that shows us that the model is a huge Goldhofer girder frame, and it's pulled by an MAN heavy haulage tractor, and it's in the colours of the UK heavy haulage specialist Allelys. And as you can see, there are many parts to this model. In true Conrad style, we start by fitting some mirrors to the cab, and that completes the assembly of the MAN. Now we can get onto the trailer, and we start by adding the drawbar attachment. That requires the steering rod to be fed inside of the trailer, and once it's in there you actually have to make quite a tricky connection to the steering mechanism. But once it's done, you can then use the drawbar to steer the trailer. There are two types of drawbar supplied, so we'll fit the shorter one, and it's a simple push fit onto the plastic connection. After that, the next step is to join up a couple of the trailer units. And again, the connection here is quite straightforward. You just join up the two trailers, and they are fixed together with a simple plastic pin. And luckily, it's easy enough to push that in through the connection. Spaces are quite tight, so it's difficult to get your fingers in, so you might need to use a tool to push the pin home. So that makes the connection, which is kind of hinged rather than fixed, but it works well enough. Next, we need to add a light array to the back of the trailer, and that's another simple push-fit connection. We can then hook the front of the trailer into the big tractor unit. We can now get on with the heavy construction work of the girder bridge. All of the pieces are metal and they're very robustly made, and they are joined together using Conrad's favoured plastic pins. Because all of the parts come in separate sections, you can configure many different variations of the trailer, but for this assembly we will build the maximum size that's possible. Having built the flat part of the trailer, we can now add the gooseneck beams on at each end. Next, we mount each end of the girder frame with its turntables onto the trailer units, and these get lightly clipped into position. So the girder frame is now completely mounted, and we can adjust its width. Included with the model are some width spacers, and plenty are supplied in 4 different sizes. For this particular assembly, we'll pick the 3rd largest size, and then clip the crossbeams into place. And that produces a nice rigid structure. We'll adjust the height of the girder frame later on. The tractor is an MAN TGX XXL SLT, and the front axles are modelled for functionality rather than detail. The rear axles are more detailed in plastic, but a modelling compromise is that there's no drive shaft modelled, but it does have different tyres front and rear. Looking at the top of the cab, it's nicely shaped and there are beacon lights and a very nice light bar with Allelys on the visor. At the front, the decoration looks very good, but there is no license plate. There's also a heavy-duty towing hitch. The decoration on the side of the cab is really good, and the Allelys colour scheme looks great. And that includes colour-coded mirrors. The wheels also look smart. There's a nice textured surface above the wheels, and it all has a great heavy haulage look. The ballast box has got sharply rendered graphics. There are spare wheels at the front and a replica tarpaulin on top. At the back there's a plastic towing hitch, but there's no license plate. A standout feature of the detailing though is the equipment tower. It is metal and has a very nice mesh grille on top. The trailer units are fairly simple in terms of detail. The axle units are all modelled in plastic, and there's a robust metal structure. The top surface is very simple, and there's some detailing on the edges, including a Goldhofer badge. The wheels are modelled in plastic with some detailing. The turntable units have got some nice heavy-duty hydraulic hoses, but in other respects are fairly simple. There are some very nice-looking Allelys graphics on the side girders, and they are also on the deck girders. We are back under the MAN, and as you can see the rear axles have some float. The steering works well with a very good angle. With that, let's get out onto the road, and it's not particularly free rolling. There's perhaps too much friction in the wheels for that. But the steering is a big plus point because you can get some excellent poses, but you need to slacken it off a bit to prevent any fouling of the wheels on the wheel arches. Another feature is the tilting cab. You can see the engine, but it doesn't want to stay tilted, so you can't really pose it that way. Another option for the tractor is to remove the ballast box, so you could attach a conventional trailer. There are 4 of these trailer units and they are all the same. There's vertical movement on the axle sets, and there is also linked steering. The axle units are also able to oscillate on their mountings. They roll along very smoothly, and they also do a reasonable job of cornering once you have set the steering. During the assembly stage we built the girder frame, but at that point it was grounded on the floor. You obviously need to be able to raise it for transport, and that can be done by adjusting the hydraulics at each end. But it is very stiff and awkward to do, although ultimately that's a good thing because it will hold a pose once it's set. And here you can see the trailer deck raised above the ground. There's other functionality too because the deck can be tilted. And I suppose if you had some need to, you could also go for some side-to-side movement of the whole frame. And all of this functionality works very well. Let's apply a realistic looking load, and this is a transformer. And this is a heavy resin model. And here the very stiff hydraulic rams come into their own, because despite the heavy load there's no sagging of the trailer deck, and it holds its clearance really well. And actually this is a very impressive feature.
Time for a dim check.
We've built the model in just about its longest configuration, so let's do a dim check. And it's about 41 inches or 104 centimeters long. Of course, a big plus point of a model like this is the different ways you can display it. You can have an assembly diorama or different configurations of the trailer. This is a hugely impressive model by Conrad. It looks great in the colour scheme of Allelys, and the overall functionality and flexibility of the girder frame is really good. The level of detailing was also very good for its time. When the model was introduced in 2010, it was rated as very good.